This is Janet Diane Moria Spordlow for Expansions.com, and as you notice, Stewart isn't here this week because he is in Africa teaching a seminar for a private client. So if you are interested in any private seminars or retreat sessions, please let us know as soon as possible because we have a very, very full schedule for 2017 already. Now, on to the news, because this is our last week of March, and I will also tell you that this is the birthday of my father. So, for those of you who want to wish Grandpa Bob a happy 91st birthday, you can leave it on the comments, because I'm sure he will be watching. Anyway, on to the news. To start with, mainstream media finally exposes elite pedophile rings and horrifying episode of Dr. Phil. I am sure by now that you probably, if you've not watched this episode, you have heard about it. And actually, I was rather surprised to see it on mainstream media. In fact, I checked with some of my sources to see if it was a real report, because sometimes, as you know, for the fake news out there. But anyway, according to my sources, they said, yes, it is new, or it is news, and it is real. Apparently, this young woman who goes by the name of Kendall describes that she was born into the world of elite sexual slavery, and she made her first appearance after supposedly escaping from the man she calls her owner. She describes being forced to participate in actions that shocked the conscience. She said she was born to be a sex slave and that she was molested before she was 2 years old. In fact, she doesn't even know her age because she was born into the trade and is sold to an owner, supposedly. And then she says that she was often used by pillars of the community, with some owning private islands, large pieces of land. And she says that one of her most fearful memories was of the pedophiles hosting a hunting party on their private plots of land, making numerous children run and hide in fear because they were the prey to be hunted. And then when they were caught, they were tortured and sexually used. And Dr. Phil confirms that he had a team that investigated Kendall's case for 4 months and consulted with law enforcement experts who confirmed the story. Dr. Phil said he believes 100% that Kendall's telling the truth. And she also explains that she and other children were often hung from cages, suspended from the ceiling, and they were often drugged before being transported in the darkness of night. Now, I thought this was an extremely interesting story for a variety of reasons, because I will tell you that there is a reason that this is being put out for you. Now, this is mainstream television, and I have told you before with my experience and Stewart's experience that all of these kind of shows have a script because they are sponsored, and guess who owns the companies that sponsor these shows? It's going to be the global elite. So this isn't going out there unless they want it out there, and there's no way that she could ever escape from an owner unless the owner allowed her to escape. So with that said, I want to remind you about the Blue Blood book, Blue Blood, True Blood, Conflict, and Creation, that Stewart wrote back in 2002. And on page 71 of his Blood Ritual and Ceremony, he says, a typical religious rite ceremony attended by most of the world leaders and corporate elite of the planet usually begins at dawn. Several animals, in quotes, are released into a protected wilderness area. These are humans chosen for their strength and power, usually male, but may include females and can be of any race. The animals are usually drugged with amphetamines to make the hunt more interesting. The hunters are armed with guns, knives, and sometimes bows and arrows. The prey is usually allowed to run and wander until dusk. The area is booby-trapped to the advantage of the mostly intoxicated hunters. During the course of the day, some prey is caught in the traps. They are tortured, raped, and killed by the hunters. Their bodies are burned. Sometimes parts of the bodies are kept as trophies. At dusk, the remainder of the prey are rounded up and secured. The non-white victims are killed on the spot, and so on and so forth. So if you have not read this book, written in 2002 by Stewart, my sweet husband, and you will find out a lot of things here that is now being released on mainstream news. So this is not news. If you haven't read this book in a while and you have it, you might want to review it. It's also available on Kindle. And then, of course, followed up with True World History. But this is the one that's going to tell you about the ritual that goes on by the global elite. So it's not news to us. It might be news to you. I thought you would find that interesting, that it is now mainstream news. And then we have Donald Trump claiming that he will stop child trafficking. And former Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney agrees with Trump and saying that if they go after these pedophiles, that it will take down the Democrats and the Republicans. In fact, she was questioning 2005 Donald Rumsfeld on the issue of child trafficking, and she didn't last long in the House because this is what she was pushing. And now here we have Donald Trump making his war on human trafficking official. So we'll see what happens with that. And of course, to emphasize everything, we have Oklahoma Senator Ralph Shorty quitting because he was caught with a 17-year-old male who he claims they were just hanging out with at a motel. He's married, and anyway, not so good for him. But I will tell you, why are they putting this out for you now? Well, I'll tell you why. And I've told you this before, because in my opinion, they want to make pedophilia legal. There are groups pushing for that who are saying that it is normal for males to be attracted to children. They have sex toy dolls that are children, which I've reported on that before, and it is going to be part of New World religion. So what do? They tell you these kind of stories. You go, oh my gosh, that's so terrible. That's what opens the frequency. And once the frequency is open, then bit by bit by bit, you get used to it, and what was abnormal becomes normal. So that is why this is now coming out on mainstream news. So watch for more of these stories, and watch for more high-level politicians to be brought down as examples, but that will gradually change. So just watch. Next, we have scientists speculating that mysterious radio bursts are actually powering alien ships. That's right, scientists. This latest theory is from a pair of Harvard scientists who say they've been studying fast radio bursts. These are sudden flashes of radio pulses from beyond our galaxy that our radio telescopes only catch glimpses of. So their new theory says that a super advanced alien species is using these incredibly powerful bursts of energy to push themselves around the universe on light sails. So again, the aliens are here and they're letting you know. And in the meantime, Donald Trump signed a law that will let NASA focus on sending humans to Mars, quote, someday. He gives the agency, or authorizes the agency, a $19.5 billion budget for the fiscal year that started October 1. I could do a lot with $19.5 billion for one fiscal year, let me tell you. Anyway, a good portion of this act focuses on sending a crewed mission to Mars in 2033. 2033, that adds up to an 8. That is an oversoul year, an energy year, and a money year. Anyway, NASA is already working toward that goal, which of course is no surprise to you. And that NASA is also claiming that it's testing its astronauts to be prepared to be Mars colonists. And NASA is saying that one day that the Mars colonists may need to alter their bodies to survive on the red planet. In fact, they could eventually evolve into a new species. Now they claim that they will need body modifications and drugs to survive the trip. And they're saying that this separate species will happen, say, within 6,000 years, right? We know what they do. They put out 6,000 years, and they go 5,000, and then 2,000, 1,500, oh, 10 years from now, oh, you know what, tomorrow. So, you know, they're never off target once they start telling you things. It's a way of beginning to imprint you so you will accept the agenda. Okay, and speaking of Donald Trump, his daughter Ivanka Trump is getting an office in the White House. Now, she's not a government employee, nor will she be, and there's not a whole lot of precedent for a first family member to have this kind of power, but her attorney says that she will serve as her father's eyes and ears, but it is unclear exactly what that means. However, Ivanka has agreed to abide by the same ethics rules as official government employees. And in the meantime, her husband, Jared Kushner, also has watchdogs wondering about conflicts of interest because he serves as a senior advisor to the president. And remember what I've been telling you, that they're going to set them up as like an empire. And it's going to be a family thing. And as I've told you before, that most of the people in the U.S., according to the studies, and of course who puts these studies out, I don't know, but the new upcoming millennials don't trust democracy. So maybe they'll trust a Trump empire. So watch out if you're in the younger generations. And then I thought next one was interesting because Planned Parenthood says it's time for Ivanka Trump to stand up for women. Now it says that she has been, let's see, I didn't put that in here, but anyway, it said something in the article about how she's been very, here we go. Her silence on legislation that affects women is deafening, and that's a quote. Now let me tell you what's happening here. Ivanka Trump doesn't have to say anything. She just has to exist. But if everybody says, oh, we need a statement from her, and they'll say, oh, can you give us a statement? Then she will say, oh, I'll reluctantly give you a statement, and people will be thrilled. So whoever's running this show, they know their audience. They know the emotions that are out there, and they know how to play on those emotions. So she's not deafening in her silence on legislation. She's intentionally not making a statement so they can call for her to make a statement, so then she can make the statement. They say, wow, she's finally made a statement. So anyway, round and round and round on the loop, it's a show. So as long as you recognize the show, then it's not going to affect you. And speaking of Ivanka Trump, did you know that while her father was saying to buy American and hire American, that there were about 50 tons of Ivanka Trump branded clothing that was imported into the U.S. from China between November 8th and February 26th. Apparently, a news agency in France revealed more than 2 tons in women's polyester woven blouses, 1,600 cowhide leather wallets, 23 tons in footwear entered the country during this period. And this is only what they're telling us, so imagine what's going on behind the scenes that they're not telling you. Now, you probably are aware by now that the flat earth theory is really making headway. And then we have all kinds of theories about what the earth really is, which is, again, bizarre. And of course, maps. People are complaining about maps, or shall we say the global elite are putting these little things out, and then the people are picking up on it saying, geez, maybe we should complain about the maps. So the Boston Public School District is changing the maps in its classrooms. Apparently it previously used the Mercator map, which makes North America and Europe appear bigger than they are. And so critics say it's biased toward former imperialistic nations. So now they're going to use the Gall-Peters map, but then critics say that's misleading in a different way because the shapes of the continents are off. So you're going to have to make your choices, but as I've told you before many times, that if they can't control you, they will confuse you. Well, I've also told you they're confusing you now so they can control you. You don't know what's up, what's down, if you're inside the earth or outside the earth, if it's flat or round, what the shape of the continents are, where you are. But I will tell you, when they wanted North America, the USA, to be make a big statement in the world, be a global power, it was big. Now they don't want it to be a global power because they want to break us all apart. And so now what are they going to do? They're going to shrink North America down for you. And then they're going to make other places in the world big. And I've been telling you this about Africa. That's a continent to watch. They aren't talking about it. They keep you away so you don't know what's going on in there. But the African continent is rich in minerals, in mining, and all kinds of resources that you don't have a clue about. In fact, they are using that to grow more crops. They're taking away the small farmer land. They're turning it into big agribusiness. A lot of things going on in Africa right now. And when Stewart comes back, he will have more stories to tell us. And here's another story that I have reported on in my way before, and now it's becoming the truth because, as I tell you this, I'm watching these trends, that now they are have a bill out that if it passed, it's called the Preserving Employee Wellness Act. This bill would allow companies to penalize employees who refuse genetic testing in wellness programs. Now, I'm familiar with these wellness programs because I know people who work for big companies. And the wellness programs often are, if you take all the medical tests, that means that women go through the mammograms, whatever invasive tests they want you to take, they will decrease your cost of health insurance premium. Now, a long time ago, and your memory may or may not be there, employers paid for all of the health insurance premiums. Then bit by bit, they started taking that away as a benefit, and the people started paying for a little bit of their health insurance premiums, and that's grown. Now, I've told you as a small business person, I pay for my own premiums about $1,500 a month with $10,000 deductible. That means I don't get sick because I don't want to have any problems. However, if you're an employee and maybe you have to pay $150, maybe $350 a month, depending on the size of your family, that makes a big cut in your paycheck. So of course you want to comply, because the more you comply, then the more money you have for take-home pay. Now with genetic testing, they're going to do the same thing. This bill would allow companies to offer employees lower health care premiums in exchange for participating in voluntary health screenings. But of course right now genetic testing is off limits. Now employees who choose not to participate can be charged 30 to 50% more for health insurance. And testing typically includes cholesterol screenings, personal habit questionnaires, and sometimes courses in weight loss or quitting smoking. So it sounds very, it's not such a big deal. But these voluntary health programs are not really so voluntary because of the economic consequences, especially for families or young college grads getting out with a high debt. So it makes a difference. So it's voluntary, but yet they're forcing you to do it. Okay, next. We have a politician in Texas, Jessica Farrar, who's a Democrat, and she has putting forward a bill called the Man's Right to Know Act. Now, in case you're wondering why she put this forward, she said that she wants to target healthcare legislation in her state that relates to abortion for women, which she says is ridiculous in her way. So therefore, she wants to have something similar for men. And what does this mean? This means, for starters, that she's proposing to fine men $100 for masturbating as an act against an unborn child. She said that they need to have a mandatory waiting period before a vasectomy procedure, receiving a prescription for Viagra, as well as a medically unnecessary digital rectal exam. I mean, like, who would have that unless, it was medically necessary? That's my feeling, but I'm not a man. I don't think, unless I'm gender fluid today. I haven't checked. I might have changed. Anyway, she said that these are real Texas laws and healthcare restrictions faced by Texas women every session. She says that the headline stipulation of the bill would categorize ejaculation outside either a vagina or a medical facility as an act against an unborn child and failing to preserve the sanctity of life. Now, she says that a lot of people find the bill funny, but what's not funny are the obstacles that Texas women face every day that were placed there by legislatures, making it very difficult for them to access health care. So again, just letting you know what's going on in this crazy world. And speaking of a crazy world, how about money for disobedience? That's right, and not from just anybody, but from the MIT Media Lab is now rewarding disobedience with cash money, $250,000 to be exact. So if they don't want to give me the $19.5 billion like they gave to NASA, maybe they give me $250,000 because I can do a lot of good in the world for $250,000. But here we go, constructive civil disobedience. The award celebrates the principles of nonviolence, creativity, courage, and taking responsibility for one's actions. Apparently, the MIT Media Lab Disobedience Award wants to recognize individuals or groups pushing boundaries across diverse disciplines around the world. And this isn't just about politics, it applies to science, advocacy, and art. The recipients will be announced at the Media Lab's third annual summer event this coming July. And then at the end it says, this is an interesting question, what do you think about rewarding civil disobedience? So here they're putting that out, that word civil disobedience. And another word they're putting out, which I didn't put this in my news, but I noticed it again in a very odd way, is the word resurrection. So I can't even remember what it was. Oh, I know about the changing roles of sexuality. I watched a little clip on that on YouTube. And they were talking about resurrecting this and resurrecting that. I'm thinking, okay, they're putting this word in wherever they can. So civil disobedience is also being put out there wherever they can. So watch for that. Because, again, don't get involved. Change inside of yourself. And on to the Pope. Pope Francis has always got interesting things going on as another world icon that is imprinting the masses. Now this I thought was interesting because it says that the Catholic Church does allow married men to achieve priesthood in some cases, but it doesn't happen often. And I didn't realize that, although I might have heard rumors of that before. Apparently, Protestant married priests who convert to Catholicism can stay married and become a Roman Catholic priest. And then the Pope said in an interview with a German newspaper that he would consider letting viri probati, or tested men be ordained in the Catholic Church. He told the paper, quote, "We need to think about whether viri probati could be a possibility. If so, we would need to determine what duties they could undertake, for example, in remote communities." And I'm not really sure what viri probati means. That's something I'm going to have to investigate a little bit further, but again, interesting. And then Pope Francis, again, saying that, telling his priests that they should be willing to call on an exorcist, but they should make sure the person is actually possessed first. Now, again, New World religion, the astral world, which I've been telling you about, demons and all this stuff, which they are real. And here we have from the Pope, again, putting this forward into your consciousness. In fact, starting in 1999, the devil wanted priests to separate possession from mental illnesses, because several people who were thought to have mental illnesses died during exorcisms. So what are they doing during exorcisms that people would die? They don't say that here. Apparently, Pope Francis has made sure that priests are prepared to perform exorcisms by recognizing the International Association of Exorcists, who are, guess what, a group of hundreds of priests who are prepared to cast out the devil. Apparently, more than his predecessors, Pope Francis speaks frequently about the devil. And last year, and I saw this video, he was seen placing his hands on the head of a man who was supposedly possessed by 4 demons, and what exorcists said was a prayer of liberation from Satan. I'm sure they'll bring that one up again, this video. Founded in 1990 by 6 Catholic priests. However, the membership is restricted and exclusive, you think, and by the year 2000, remember this is 4 years later, there were over 200 members who meet biannually in Rome. They can't meet in Rome unless the Pope, whoever it is, happens to be the Pope, or the Pope's handlers say this is what we need. The association sends out a quarterly newsletter where members can tell of particularly interesting or difficult cases, and I don't know if that's open to the public. An exorcist priest must have the permission of his bishop to join. And speaking of the devil, the Satanic Temple has launched a school anti-spanking campaign in Texas. Now, personally, I think spanking children in school shouldn't be done. That's my personal feeling about that regardless. I think that discipline should be in the home, not done by school, and I think by the time children go to school, they shouldn't need to be spanked. But that's, again, my personal feelings and opinion. Apparently, there is a growing number of Satanic Temple followers, and one of the ways that they are making their presence known is to outlaw corporal punishment in schools. So the organization actually unveiled a huge billboard in Springtown, Texas as part of their Protect Children project. I mean, who wouldn't want to be a part of that, right? Protect Children project? Just the fact that it's being sponsored by the Satanic Temple. Geez, who would ever think to question that, right? The billboard reads, "Never be hit in school again. Exercise your religious rights." Apparently, in 2012, a male vice principal spanked 2 female students aged 15 and 16. To me, that sounds very inappropriate, leaving welts, blisters, and bruises, according to the teen's parents. And apparently, while corporal punishment is still legal with parental consent, it was illegal for a member of the opposite sex to paddle a student. Now, the Spring Board of Trustees changed this policy to allow the opposite sex to spank somebody on the condition that an administrator of the same sex supervises. To me, I'm sorry, it sounds really sick. And to me, that also sounds like part of New World religion, because you shouldn't be hitting, especially a 15 and a 16-year-old girl. I'm sorry. The Satanic Temple plans to post billboards near schools that still practice corporal punishment. In fact, corporal punishment is legal in 19 states, which I didn't realize it was legal in that many states. And the temple is asking for donations to help fund the campaign. Anyway, I thought that was very interesting. And on top of that, now this was actually an article from back in December, but I wanted to bring it forward since it's kind of, again, bringing up the Satanic Temple. Apparently, pro-choice groups, do not like the idea that in Texas, that they are now asking for it's called the Texas Fetus Burial Rule. So that means that any fetal tissue that is done during an abortion be given a burial or a cremation. And so the Satanic Temple is agreeing with them on that. So anyway, like I said, all kinds of weirdness going on. Now, here's another transgender story, which I thought was kind of interesting, so that's what I'm telling you. But like everything else in the beginning, people think, oh my gosh, and now it's becoming ordinary. This is a little bit more out of the ordinary, and that's why I'm telling you about it. Apparently, there is a man and his daughter who used to be a mother and a son. But they watched a transgender documentary together, then they realized that their personal identities and genders did not correspond with their birth sex. So we have a father and daughter used to be a mother and son, okay? So apparently that's when they learned what it meant to be transgender and realized that explained to both of them. So upon the revelation, the 15-year-old daughter came out and described the transition process as relieving. And again, I will tell you, a 15-year-old child should not be going through any kind of sexual transition. And in fact, and this will probably eventually change, that a lot of children in puberty have confusion about their identities, and they just need to kind of get through it. The hormones need to settle down, and they need to grow up and mature. Now, I knew something was off, says the father, who used to be the mother, but I didn't know what it was. I knew that I hated my body. I was very ashamed of it, but I didn't know why. I just thought it was me. I thought there was something wrong with my brain. I still think there's something wrong with the brain. I'm sorry. They have problems. They're trying to escape from it instead of figuring out who they are. So that's my feeling. And then this last story that I have for you is interesting. This is about Angelina Jolie and her soon-to-be, or maybe she's already divorced, ex-husband Brad Pitt. Because the story says that Jolie is bound to now ex-husband Brad Pitt by Thai tattooist. So how is she bound? Well, apparently they both had similar tattoos by a tattoo artist who uses an old-style tattooing method, which is steel rods mounted with a surgical steel needle. And it's supposed to be more painful but more accurate, which I don't know what that means, than a tattoo gun, which applies tattoos to the skin. So in my opinion, remember what I tell you, when things are written down in physical reality, that's what takes the non-physical into the physical. So the fact that they're saying she is bound to him is significant, and you want to pay attention to that. Apparently the person who does this sort of tattoos for the elite, or I'm going to say the elite's icons, because really they're icons, they're not really part of the elite in the same way that the real power people are. This tattoo artist used to be a monk. He's based in a temple near Bangkok, and his designs are said to protect whoever has them. So then the article goes on, ironically, the former couple's designs were intended to symbolically bind them as husband and wife, yet their marriage did not stand the test of time. And I just posted an article, and I've told you about this many times before, that the ink and the ink carriers that happen in tattoos, very, very bad for your health. So, and here we're talking about the symbolism of it, so it means what you're putting on your body is changing your mind pattern. All kinds of things that happen with tattoos that people don't have a clue what they're doing, and just because the indigenous people used to do it, they knew what they were doing and why. You don't. So I still am totally against the tattoos, so do not get one. That's my news for the day. I want to add to you some of our upcoming events. You may remember that Stewart, of course, is in Africa. When he comes back, he heads for the Exposing the Truth conference in Poland with Laura Eisenhower, and then he also has an event directly following in Berlin. And people say, is this in English? Yes, he gives it in English. It's translated into Polish in Poland, and it's translated into German in Germany. So if you're English speaking and it's a short hop for you, then you can go to Poland or Germany and meet Stewart. The personal consultations are sold out in Poland. I think there are a few left in Germany, but I'm not really sure on that one. And then when he comes back, then of course I take my Clear Health and Healing Tour to the northern parts of Italy. So you want to join me on that one because it is an incredibly, I can't even describe it. It's just amazing spiritual awakening that you will have up in the mountains. So it's fantastic. We did it last year. It was such a success. I'm going back. Personally, I can't wait to go. And then we have our September Spectacular, and following that we have a date change on our Big Bend and Carlsbad Caverns National Parks. Our new departure date is October 6th. So you want to read this online. We haven't had a chance to make the change on the website yet, but we were notified by the tour company that it is October 6th for our departure date. So mark your calendars. If you sign up before the end of March, you have just a few days left, you still get $100 off of this tour. After that, then you don't get $100 off anymore, so think about it. Anyway, with that said, there's lots of weirdness going on in the world. Remember, Blue Blood, True Blood, Stewart said it first back in 2002. And of course, True World History is a good follow-up. If you like Blue Blood, you can get both in one envelope, probably another book or two, depending on how big they are, because postage is very pricey, especially overseas. And so the more books you get in one envelope, then the price per item goes down. And if you have a Kindle, a lot of people get them there, and then so they can carry them with them, and then they get the books that are in paper form, which is of course the way I like to read them, because I like to hold the books. Then you can have that for your personal library. So with that said, I want to thank you for joining me, Janet Diane Moria Swordlow, expansions.com.